Breaking news from the State House. One of the big bills in front of the Senate.
Members of the Senate are focusing on gun rights in the wake of the Supreme Court's Bruin decision.
Topics ranging from gun rights and private property laws to foreign property confiscation.
Here in the U.S., the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing arguments on a $10 billion lawsuit.
It's a case that legal experts will be watching closely when it likely heads before the justices.
The Supreme Court just did something that every gun owner needs to know about, but almost nobody's talking about it. While everyone was focused on the headlines, the highest court in the land quietly reshaped the entire landscape of gun rights in America. And if you own a firearm, what they decided affects you directly. No grand announcements, no press conferences, just a series of rulings that fundamentally altered how the Second Amendment works in practice. Some of these decisions expanded your rights in ways you might not expect. Others drew clear boundaries around what responsible ownership means. But together, they sent one unmistakable message that's going to shape gun ownership for the next generation. Here's what makes this so significant. The court didn't just rule on individual cases. They established a new framework for how gun rights will be interpreted moving forward. They're pulling the Constitution back to its original meaning while making it clear that with rights come responsibilities. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about establishing the rules of the game for years to come. Let me break down exactly what happened and why it matters to you. The first major signal came through a case involving domestic violence restraining orders. Now, this might sound straightforward, but the implications run much deeper.
God, how cool is this?
Major decision from the Supreme Court that could have larger implications on gun laws nationwide.
The Supreme Court today handed down a major victory for gun control advocates. Domestic violence abusers can be barred from owning guns.
The justices have ruled that people who are under domestic violence restraining orders cannot possess a firearm.
The court upheld that individuals who pose proven threats can have their firearm rights temporarily restricted. But here's the crucial part. They emphasized the word proven. This wasn't about accusations or political disagreements. This was about documented legal determinations of danger. What the court really said was this: the Second Amendment remains strong for law-abiding citizens, but it's not a shield for those who genuinely threaten others. They drew a clear line between legitimate self-defense and documented threats to public safety. For responsible gun owners, this actually strengthens your position. It shows the court takes both rights and public safety seriously, which builds credibility for the entire gun-owning community. But that was just the beginning. The next ruling tackled something that's been frustrating gun owners for years: federal agencies making up their own rules.
My response to that is that's the same claptrap that they have been using for 20 years.
It also puts state laws in jeopardy that are similar to this law.
The government may not regulate individuals' possessions of weapons for self-defense.
It triggers something in me that something has to be done.
Everybody has a right if they're a responsible adult.
The case centered on bump stocks and whether the ATF could simply declare them illegal without Congress passing a law. The court's answer was decisive. No, they cannot. This ruling goes far beyond bump stocks. For decades, federal agencies have been expanding firearm regulations through creative interpretations and policy changes. The court just put a stop to that. They made it crystal clear that only Congress can create new firearm restrictions, not unelected bureaucrats. Agencies must follow the actual law as written, not what they wish it said. Think about what this means. No more surprise redefinitions, no more policy changes based on who's running an agency. The rules have to come through your elected representatives, where you have a voice. This returns power to where the Constitution intended, with the people and their lawmakers. Then came a more nuanced decision about unfinished firearm parts and kits. The court allowed some regulation here, but only within strict constitutional boundaries. They recognized that kits designed for rapid conversion into functioning firearms could be regulated, but they protected the long-standing tradition of Americans building their own lawful firearms. This wasn't a rollback of rights. It was a precision decision that maintains the balance between legitimate law enforcement concerns and constitutional freedoms.
You couldn't get a firearm and carry it just because you wanted to be protected against criminals.
The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
For the Supreme Court, it's all about language: reasonable suspicion, objective reasonable belief, or probable cause.
So the Supreme Court has issued an order in the critical Second Amendment Preservation Act's challenge that was pending in front of their court.
It conflicts with the Second Amendment's right to bear arms,
saying setting a higher threshold in an emergency could mean life or death.
Raw materials and parts remain unregulated. The ability to build lawful firearms at home remains protected, but kits specifically designed to circumvent existing laws face appropriate scrutiny. Next, the court delivered a unanimous message to those trying to attack gun rights through the back door. Mexico had sued American gun manufacturers, blaming them for cartel violence. The court's response was swift and decisive. American companies cannot be held liable for crimes committed with legally sold products, especially crimes committed in other countries. This matters more than you might think. For years, anti-gun groups have tried to bankrupt the firearms industry through lawsuits when they couldn't ban guns directly. The Supreme Court just slammed that door shut. The Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act stands firm, and the American firearms industry remains protected from these backdoor attacks. While all this was happening, the court positioned itself for what might be the biggest decision yet, the constitutionality of so-called assault weapon bans. Maryland and Rhode Island wanted their bans upheld, but the court declined to rule immediately. However, one justice left a telling signal. The issue isn't resolved, just paused until the right case comes along. Don't mistake this silence for uncertainty. The court is waiting for the optimal case with the clearest facts. When that case arrives, we're likely to see a definitive ruling on whether states can ban entire categories of commonly owned firearms. The groundwork is being laid right now. Meanwhile, Hawaii tried something clever that could have destroyed carry rights nationwide. They claimed you couldn't carry on any private property without explicit permission first. Sounds reasonable until you realize that includes every store, restaurant, parking lot, and business you visit daily.
The highest court in the land is now looking into overturning Hawaii's strict gun laws.
That's right. The highest court has agreed to hear arguments on a challenge of the laws that limit where concealed carry is allowed.
Cite on a Hawaii gun law that's under review by the nation's high court.
It's out of Hawaii. It sounds like that it has to do with concealed carry laws.
The law the Supreme Court justices have their eye on is one that prevents people from carrying guns in certain public places.
The justices will decide if it violates the right to carry weapons in public for self-defense.
Businesses are welcome to put up signs that say this is a gun-free zone, but if you don't, then it's expected that you are able to carry on that property.
It would have turned the right to carry into a practical impossibility. The Supreme Court saw through this immediately and agreed to review the case. This matters everywhere, not just Hawaii. If the court strikes down this scheme, other states can't use property laws as a backdoor gun ban. The ruling will determine whether your carry rights end at every doorway or travel with you as a law-abiding citizen. But perhaps the most important development was how the court corrected lower courts that were misinterpreting previous rulings. Some judges demanded identical laws from 1791 to justify any modern regulation. Others used vague historical references to uphold any restriction they liked. The Supreme Court stepped in with clear guidance. Historical comparisons must be genuine but don't need to be identical. Judges can't reject modern rights just because the founders had muskets, but they also can't ignore constitutional text in favor of personal policy preferences. This clarification prevents judges from watering down your rights through technical games. It creates consistency across the country and builds a stable foundation for future cases. The court is establishing order, not leaving gun rights to the whims of individual judges. Right now, states across the country are scrambling to respond to these rulings. Some are strengthening constitutional carry and locking in protections. Others are testing new restrictions, trying to find what limits might survive constitutional scrutiny.
The majority of the court ruling the Constitution protects a person's right to carry a gun outside the home.
This is a case that's been bounced around back and forth throughout the court system.
Now, this is the most significant Second Amendment ruling in more than a decade.
State can't make everywhere a sensitive place. You can't go hiking in some places and not be able to defend yourself against somebody that you run into.
In a 6-3 decision, the court struck down New York's law, which places restrictions on concealed handguns.
The legal landscape is shifting in real time, with legislators, attorneys general, and law enforcement updating policies as fast as courts issue rulings. This creates both opportunities and challenges. In gun-friendly states, rights are expanding and becoming more secure. In restrictive states, the battleground is shifting to specific locations and circumstances rather than outright bans. Courts are fast-tracking firearms cases instead of letting them languish for years. The pace of change has never been faster. For gun owners, this rapid evolution demands attention and adaptation. Compliance isn't surrender, it's strength. Courts respond favorably to responsible ownership, proper documentation, and lawful conduct. Keep your records organized, follow storage requirements, track permit timelines if you're in a regulated state. Stay connected to reliable legal information, not rumors or speculation. This discipline serves a larger purpose. When gun owners demonstrate responsibility and preparation, it shifts public opinion, increases political influence, and shows courts that the right to keep and bear arms is exercised by mature, civic-minded citizens. Your conduct today shapes the legal landscape tomorrow.
We won't see changes overnight, but it's going to be quick.
This case could reshape how far states can restrict your right to carry it.
And today, the Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. That puts a limit on the right to have a gun.
There is a difference between states deciding how they want to regulate any number of things versus stripping people of their rights to self-defense.
Give us transparency in how you're going to handle them. And if there's a roadmap of what you're going to follow that's more clear, then it's going to be a fairer process for everyone.
The Supreme Court has strengthened the Second Amendment's foundation, but preserving these rights requires active participation from those who exercise them. Courts can define freedom, but only citizens can maintain it. Responsible ownership, continuous education, and steady lawful conduct transform court rulings into lasting cultural change. This moment calls for leadership from within the gun-owning community. It asks for citizens who model the balance the court expects: freedom with order, rights with responsibility. When gun owners carry themselves with knowledge, respect, and purpose, the Second Amendment becomes more than a legal right. It becomes a cultural pillar that endures through changing courts, elections, and generations. The Supreme Court has spoken through actions, not words. They've protected core rights while demanding responsibility. They've restricted agency overreach while respecting legitimate public safety concerns. They've returned power to its constitutional source while expecting citizens to rise to the moment. The future of gun rights now rests where it belongs, with the people who exercise them. How gun owners respond to this moment, how they conduct themselves, and how they engage with the evolving legal landscape will determine whether these court victories translate into lasting freedom. Don't wait for others to interpret these changes for you. Don't rely on secondhand information or social media rumors. Stay informed through reliable sources. Understand not just what the law says, but why it matters. Prepare not just for today's requirements, but tomorrow's opportunities. Freedom survives only when citizens take ownership of it. Rights endure only when exercised responsibly. This moment in history offers unprecedented clarity from the highest court, but it demands unprecedented engagement from gun owners. Rise to that challenge, and the Second Amendment will emerge stronger than ever. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.